Good morning, happy Easter, and welcome to the Oasis Weekly Global Gathering. My name's Steve Chalke. I'm the founder of the Oasis charity and I'm also one of the ministers of Oasis Church in Waterloo, central London. And if this is the first time you've joined this global gathering, wherever you live in the UK or elsewhere around the world, we are extra glad that you're with us. A huge welcome to you. The story of Easter Day and the events leading up to it sit right at the very heart of the church's message. The pain of Maundy Thursday. Jesus is betrayed, falsely accused, arrested and humiliated. The agony of Good Friday. Jesus is condemned to death, deserted and eventually executed. The emptiness of Saturday. The questions keep coming. Has God been defeated? Did we all believe for nothing? Is there any way forward? And then finally, the renewed hope of Easter Sunday morning, the resurrection, but still with lots of confusion and endless questions. Is it actually true? Really? And even if it is, what does it mean? Because of coronavirus, the vast majority of the world's people, just like us, are at this moment enduring some form of lockdown or restriction to their freedom. We're being forced to keep ourselves physically or spatially distant from one another. But spatially distanced doesn't necessarily mean socially separated or spiritually abandoned. Human beings were made for community, which is one of the reasons why meeting like this, albeit with the obvious limitations, is so important, especially when we can't be physically together. So welcome to the Oasis Global Gathering, a space to pause. A time to breathe. A moment to stop. An opportunity to reflect. We're really glad that you've joined us for it. Now, as part of this morning's gathering, we're going to be hearing from Alvin, who is the Oasis Country Director for Uganda. Alvin's going to tell us something of what life is like there in the present crisis, as well as about how Oasis is working to help with the response. We're going to hear from Anne. Anne leads Whole Community Church, which is part of the Oasis network of churches here in the UK, and she's going to lead our prayers. And from Nathan Jones, who's part of Oasis Church in Waterloo. Nathan's going to explore the story of Easter Sunday for us. And then finally, before we conclude this week, a musical innovation. So, sit back and enjoy.
Greetings from Oasis Uganda. My name is Alvin Muhwezi. I'm the country director for Oasis Uganda. I hope you're all doing well, or at least doing the best you can to cope with this very difficult time that we are in. I want to give you words of encouragement that through these interactions, be it online or on phone, that we stay in touch and keep encouraging each other. In Uganda now we have 48 cases of COVID-19. Fortunately, we have no deaths, and the communities are coping the best way they can. We had some good news about 2 days ago. A pregnant mother who was diagnosed with the coronavirus had her baby, a baby girl, and both mother and baby are doing fine. The government has also responded quite well. They're offering relief packages to the most vulnerable homes. As of yesterday, they had provided food rations to about 1.5 million homes of those who are most needy. As Oasis Uganda, we are also operating, albeit at a very minimal scale and mostly online. So for example, the girls and boys who come to our center in Kampala, Skilling Center, are getting online assignments, and we are doing phone call follow-ups to families that we support. We are particularly worried about the economic impact of all this, especially in Uganda, where about 70% of our sector is informal. But we trust that we will pull through like we've done in the past when we had to deal with Ebola and Marburg in the early 2000s. It is going to be imperative that Oasis as an organization keeps its operations going during and after this pandemic, and we trust on your support and prayers as we all find a way to cope, not only here in Uganda, but across the Oasis family. Thank you for taking time to listen to me. I hope you're staying safe and staying indoors, and God bless you all.
There's a story about a guy called Jock. He lived in the countryside in the west of Scotland. His wife had died a long time ago, and Jock and Isla, his only daughter, had muddled on through together. Isla grew up and got offered a job in London, and with Jock's blessing, she took it. Isla loved the big city, and she settled quickly. She met a guy called Rob, who became her boyfriend and then her husband. A couple of years later, Finley was born, and Jock could not have been more proud of his first grandchild. Jock made more regular trips down south, and Isla brought Finley back home as often as she could so that Jock could show him off to his mates. Now, Jock used to spend Christmas in London with Isla, and this year he was particularly excited. He'd been ill for a while, so he hadn't been able to make it down to London, and Isla had been really busy with work, so she hadn't been able to bring Finley to Scotland for what felt like forever. Like a kid, Jock hardly slept the night before, but still, when the alarm went off, he bounced out of bed. He was early to the bus stop. He was at the station an hour before his train, a long train journey, then the underground, then a bus, and finally he made it to Isla's flat. Jock buzzed the intercom and Isla answered. "Dad, I've left the door open. Rob's parents are coming over for a meal. I've got a million things to do." Jock bounced up the stairs and threw open the front door of the flat. There was Finley, screaming, crying, stuck in a playpen. Finley heard his grandfather open the door. He turned, he stopped crying immediately, and he beamed at Jock, his arms outstretched. Jock stretched out his own arms, ran across the room, and he was just about to pick Finley up when he heard his daughter shout from the kitchen, "Dad, please just leave him in there. He's been a nightmare today, so I've left him in there because I've got to get this dinner sorted. If you take him out of that playpen, I'll never get everything done in time." Jock was stuck. He desperately wanted to pick up his grandson. He'd waited for so long to see him, but at the same time he loved his daughter, and he understood her problem. So Jock thought for a second, and then he realised what he had to do. He put his arms down, and he climbed over the walls of the playpen. He moved some toys, squeezed himself uncomfortably into a space alongside Finley, and he hugged his grandson. Today is Easter Sunday, when Christians all over the world celebrate Jesus' resurrection. We celebrate Jesus coming back to life and defeating death. But before we get to the bit about what Jesus' death and resurrection means, let's talk about one aspect of what Jesus' life means. I think that with what's going on in the world at the moment, the story of Jock and his grandson is an example of what some of us might need. We need to know that the story of Jesus is a story about when God climbed over the walls of the playpen. That through Jesus, God looks at us in all our struggles with everything we've got going on, and he says, "Do you know what? I'm with you. I'm climbing into the playpen. Jesus lived among us because the resurrection is also about life before death. And that life can be tough. The Bible never claims that everything in this life would go smoothly for people after the resurrection. The Bible never claims that Jesus' victory over death meant victory over everything in the day-to-day. And we know this, don't we? We live through struggle. Not just at this moment, but before this too. If I stood here and I told you that if you believe this story about Jesus coming back from the dead, then your troubles would go away, well, that wouldn't fit with my actual experience of following Jesus. But the thing is, and I don't say this lightly, the thing is that I believe in a God who is with us in the struggle and who empathizes with us because he also suffered. The Bible is clear that despite the resurrection, there would still be struggle. But the thing about Jesus living on earth, fully human, was not just to get to the bit where he dies so he can be resurrected. It was also about God saying he is with us in the struggle, that he's been there, that he's experienced the same range of human emotions that we have, the good days, the bad days. God climbed into the playpen. So Jesus lived, died, and on the day we celebrate today, he was resurrected. Now, there were loads of people in Jerusalem at that time who claimed that they were the Messiah, that they were the promised one that the Jewish people had been waiting for. And without the resurrection, Jesus is just yet another one of those, yet another person who claimed to be the Messiah, then was killed by the Romans, end of story. So the resurrection is crucial because it tells us that Jesus was different to all of these. Jesus was actually the Messiah. But the problem we sometimes create is that we jump straight from here to what the resurrection can do for us. We jump straight from what happened to Jesus after he died to what happens to me after I die. And the resurrection is so much more than that. It's also about life before death. The resurrection is God saying to humanity, hey, that kingdom of God that Jesus has been talking about, it's here now. And I want you to join in with it. That old way of living, of vying for power, of looking for status, leave it behind, let it go. Look at the example Jesus has set, one which was constantly about self-sacrifice, even to the ultimate end, even to death on a cross. Look at that example and follow that, because Jesus has shown that the old order can be beaten, that love can triumph over death. And a way of living which is based on sacrifice, not status, is a much better way to live. So join in. God cares about life before death. So how do we join in with this resurrection story? I think we should look to live out what the resurrection means by living the way that Jesus called us to live. Let's live lives of sacrifice, of service. We run the Waterloo Food Bank, and we're not able to open it in the way we usually do. So over the last few weeks, we've been working with a couple of other local food banks to set up a new delivery system. Instead of people coming out to us, we take the food to them. And that's meant that we've had to change all of our systems really quickly. We're using a local church as a warehouse and a distribution centre. And earlier this week, I was there filling up a van with some food parcels and delivering them to people who were in need. It really is a sight to see. There were a load of people packing the food into carrier bags, some others packing the bags into crates. Somebody else was working out where all the parcels needed to go, and another person was putting them into piles arranged by geographic location so that all the drivers would each have a small patch to cover. It was a fantastic example of people coming together to live out the resurrection. All of those volunteers, every one of them, were bringing light in the darkness. And this week, over 700 people were fed because those people followed the example of Jesus' resurrection story. The resurrection doesn't promise that everything will be okay, but that however dark the darkness, God is there with us, in it and through it. And if we live our lives in the story of the resurrection, sometimes God calls us to be the light in the darkness. By packing food bank parcels, by calling up that family who are trying to juggle working with childcare and offering to play a game over FaceTime to keep the kids occupied for an hour. By leaving a note for the delivery driver who's risking their health to deliver you some food. By calling that person you know who's isolated at the moment and is finding it difficult. Jesus' life on earth means that Christianity isn't just spiritual, but it's earthy, it's practical. It calls us to get our hands dirty, to sit alongside the broken, to be the resurrection light in the darkness. And there's a part to play in that for every single one of us. Join in.
Hello, my name's Dannerolle and I lead a church in Hull, and we've been working very closely with Oasis over the past year and looking at working in partnership. So I'm so glad to be with you this morning on Easter Sunday and to be bringing a short reflection and some prayers. I wanted to bring this morning some blessings which seem perfect for Easter Sunday but are also very personal to me. We're going through this worldwide pandemic at the minute, and the grief and trouble and trauma that everybody is experiencing is huge. But personally, over the last year, I've gone through a very difficult time of grief myself. And over a period of a few months, even as a church leader, I was struggling to pray. I just found it really, really hard to know what to say or to feel anything through the grief that I was going through. And then in December, somebody sent me a blessing. It was a blessing for the longest night, and it just touched my heart so much that I picked up the book that it was from by Jan Richardson, and I had permission to share these with you today because I'm going to read one in a moment. And since then I've been reading them every day, and they just resonated with me in my heart. Blessings are just such a beautiful thing. The Bible is full of them, but people write them every day, and I've started writing my own as well, just to write my thoughts and feelings. But the sense of a blessing, sometimes we've got it wrong. We've thought that blessings were about rewards for God's favour, but they're nothing to do with that. Blessings actually meet us in our greatest need. They are something that are beautiful. They're not magical. They can't fix us, yet they turn our eyes towards God. They turn our eyes to see and to look more closely instead of turning away, and they help us to realise that God is there with us, amongst us, amidst everything that we're going through. And it can awaken our imaginations and provoke us to look for God in the smallest things, and provoke us to a response as well, and to be able to see that God is there with us in our pain, our struggles, and just the words, the way that they turn over and they can settle within our hearts can just leave us with that sense that there is hope. So I'd like to read to you this morning a blessing that's called "Beloved is where we begin." And as we enter this time following Easter, and none of us know what this time will bring, this is a blessing for walking into the wilderness. And I want to be able to offer this to you, to be able to take with you in the days ahead. If you would enter into the wilderness, do not begin without a blessing. Do not leave without hearing who you are, beloved, named by the one who has travelled this path before you. Do not go without letting it echo in your ears. And if you find it is hard to let it into your heart, do not despair. That is what this journey is for. I cannot promise this blessing will free you from danger, from fear, from hunger or thirst, from the scorching of sun or the fall of the night. But I can tell you that on this path there will be help. I can tell you that on this way there will be rest. I can tell you that you will know the strange graces that come to our aid only on a road such as this, that fly to meet us bearing comfort and strength, that come alongside us for no other cause than to lean themselves towards our ear, and with their curious insistence whisper our name. Beloved, beloved, beloved. My prayer and my hope is that we take that with us on the journey, on this Easter Sunday, as we celebrate resurrection life, resurrection that permeates through the universe, from springtime to life cycles, regeneration, renewal, and all that word brings and means to us. But as we go into the days and weeks ahead, let us carry that blessing in our heart, that we are beloved by the one who made us and has walked this path before us, who knows suffering but knows life at the end as well, and that we will know that help is there along the way. Those strange graces, let us look for them along the path every day and in so many little ways, just to know that we are beloved.
Just like Nath has said, the resurrection of Jesus doesn't promise that everything will always be okay, but rather that, however dark the darkness, God is there with us in it and will bring us through it. And if we choose to live our lives in this great story, the story of Easter, God will call us at times to be the resurrection light in the darkness that surrounds us. When we stop long enough to think about it, there are always ways, creative, inventive and effective ways, that we can be just that, the resurrection light for others. And they always start where we live, with the resources we have and the people we actually know. So how do we continue to respond to the huge challenge that COVID-19 confronts us with? How do we stay socially and spiritually connected, though we are spatially distanced? Well, it's very clear that it's always the poor and the vulnerable who are hit the hardest in any time of crisis. So that's why Oasis continues to serve and support the isolated, as well as those who are struggling and stressed for a host of other reasons. COVID-19 does not treat the rich and poor equally. It is not the great leveller. It magnifies inequality. Those in low-paid frontline jobs are far more at risk. They're far more exposed. And the lockdown is far harder on those who live in cramped tower blocks or poor slums. Their mental health and general well-being is much more at risk. So, if you think you can help resource us in this vital work, please go to oasisuk.org/coronavirus and check out ways in which you can get involved. We'll leave the web address on screen at the end of this broadcast for you to copy down. But what if you need help? Well, a few weeks ago, here in the UK, Oasis launched a national friendship line, a phone line for anyone who's feeling lonely, anxious or worried about their health, their family, their income or their future. And for anyone who needs practical help with food or some other type of support. So if you'd like to talk or need our help, please call us. Our brand new number is 0203 9684 330, and it's open and operated by some wonderful Oasis staff around the UK from 9 AM to 5 PM today and every day of the week, including bank holidays. What's more, it will cost you no more than the price of an ordinary call. Again, that number will be on the screen alongside our web address at the end of this broadcast. Well, that's almost it for this week. So thank you again for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next Sunday as well. And in the meantime, invite your friends to join in too, because we're planning to be here at the same time in the same place every week. But just before we go, here to complete our global gathering for this week, We give you a group of our musicians who, working together over the last few days, have proved beyond doubt that being spatially distanced doesn't mean being socially isolated. Through their phones and the internet, they've recorded and produced this amazing rendition of the wonderful song, Joy. Happy Easter to you from us all.
There's beauty in my brokenness. I've got true love instead of pain. There's freedom though you've captured me. I've got joy instead of mourning. There's beauty in my brokenness. I've got true love instead of pain. There's freedom though you've captured me. I've got joy instead of mourning. And you give me joy down deep in my soul. Down deep in my soul. Down deep in my soul. And you give me joy down deep in my soul. Down deep in my soul. Down deep in my soul. There's beauty in my brokenness. I've got true love instead of pain. There's freedom though you've captured me. I've got joy instead of mourning. And you give me joy down deep in my soul. Down deep in my soul. Down deep in my soul. Joy down deep in my soul, down deep in my soul, down deep in my soul. I've never been so free, caught in your love for me. I've never been more secure, knowing your heart, Lord. I've never been so free, caught in your love for me. I've never been more secure, knowing you're in you. Joy down deep in my soul, down deep in my soul, down deep in my soul. And you give me joy down deep in my soul, down deep in my soul, down deep in my soul. Yeah, you give me joy down deep in my soul, down deep in my soul, down deep in my soul. And you give me joy down deep in my soul, down deep in my soul, down deep in my soul. And you give me joy